you know? And so what I've always really appreciated about street code and the framing of street code is not that these are underserved, underrepresented, and they need a handout and they need opportunity, but more so, no. What gets created from who they are? Struggle is one element of who they are, but other cultural elements that are embedded and have long historical roots even before America. When you bring innovation, when they're invited to the table of innovation, things get produced that are powerful.
Welcome back to the Road to Ambition podcast, where we're exploring factors that empower teens to thrive. Today, Ambition Angels CEO Remi Sobomehin is joined by Tunde Sobomehin, CEO of StreetCode Academy in East Palo Alto, California. Tunde works at the intersection of technology, education, and community development, and provides unique insight into the challenge of creating more equitable pathways into the tech industry. We're inspired by his vision for more participation, leadership, and innovation by Black and brown teens in this field. Let's dive in.
All right, Tune, thank you. Thank you for joining. I'm excited about this conversation. This is a special one, obviously, for me. You were 8 years old when I was born. And so I came in already with somebody responsible for me, somebody to look up to, a role model, and that's the beauty of just being a younger brother in general. But it's especially special when your older brother sets such a positive example, not just growing up, but then into adulthood, right? So I feel lucky to have somebody who, like, for the whole journey from college to career to parenting, intentionality in your marriage, a commitment to the mission, real leadership and service in the community has been like this example for me. And that I just get to kind of learn from, be inspired by, and be so close to. I feel really grateful for that. And so I just want to honor you. You're like a Greg Popovich in the work, in this type of work where you get to look at folks. And I hope you feel proud knowing that there are people who are following in your footsteps and taking your legacy and trying to continue it. So just want to honor you first and foremost.
Yeah, that means so much, Ram. That means so much. I keep looking at you. Your camera's beautiful. You're gorgeous. The background, the books, and I just keep admiring how you've taken the standard and then just moved it up. And this example, this podcast, your work is a reflection of that, and so many other reasons. What you just said means the world. Because I do remember being 8 years old in the top bunk. And hearing mom have all these moans and groans, and all of a sudden I hear her cry, and that was you being born in her bed next door to my room, and then growing up with you and watching you grow and being able to be a big brother, which I took a lot of pride in because of how special y'all were. Like I felt honored to be, to say I was y'all's brother, and I, for that reason, selfishly, frankly, wove y'all into everything that I did, and so it's an honor to hear you say those words. So thank you, Ram.
Dope, man. All right. So before we get into the incredible work that you're leading right now with StreetCode over the last 10 years, I want to take us further back in the story, right? So I say this often, that as a youth developer at heart, kind of learning from our dad, but, really taking that on as an identity, not just a career. Like when I look at young people, I imagine them thriving in their career and in their life. And when I look at adults, I'm curious about who they were as kids. Now, I have a little special, insight with you because I saw it up close and personal, but I want you to take our listeners back to Tunde, the 15-year-old, right? And I want you to kind of tell the story of who you are, starting with who you were as a 15-year-old and the kind of journey that's led to who you are today.
Yeah, it has two sides to that, right? A real beautiful side. I think that's the That's the heavy side, is the beautiful part of me as a 15-year-old and what it's led to. And then there's, perhaps how do you continue that, right? What was missing, I think, is one of the ways in which you said. And for me, 15 years old, I'm at Benson Tech. I'm a techman, Portland, Oregon. I have incredible mentors. I know we'll get to some of these in more detail, but like, I have role models, both dead and alive, right, that I aim to be. Dr. Martin Luther King is probably at the top of that list. I love Tupac Shakur. He was on that list. Obviously, Jesus Christ as an early Christian, and just knowing that model. That wasn't as real as it's become over the years, but I still had that as a model for what to become. And then the people in my life, right, our own dad, Mr. Fuller, Ulysses Tucker, my first basketball coach, Paul Coakley, my middle school. I mean, these are names, Michael Grice, Chappie Grice, obviously. These are people that were like, man, that was it now. So the beautiful part of that story was all those people were community activists. They were involved in community development. They planted that seed and set a model, and that's the shoes I walked in, right? So that was, and I still reflect and aim to be the kind of men that they were in the community. That's when I close my eyes, that's what I dream of. At the same time, right, there was so much of the world that was left out of that I didn't get to see, right? I didn't get to see any kind of other professional, really. When I think about it, there was no names I could drop like that were those kind of professionals, right? And even when they were, like, I think of all those people were educators. All those people were community developers.
Right.
But even Kevin Fuller, who had a esteemed executive position within the Oregonian, I never got insight into that part of the job, right? I only saw him as a community organizer. So what was missing was that real intimate, organic, not take me on a field trip. Let me ride in the car to the job. Let me see what it's like. Let me follow in your footsteps. I didn't get that in any other kind of professional setting outside of community organizing.
Right. So you had these incredible folks who, as they were pursuing their career, made a conscious choice to give back. And in so doing, you had that example of strong Black men who were positive and community oriented. Yeah. And obviously, the product that we're looking at now is a result of that example, seeing that on a daily basis. But you're saying you missed the just breadth of ways to express your gift in a career that we didn't necessarily get to see.
Beautifully said.
Right.
Express your gift in a career that we didn't get to see. That's beautifully said, Rem.
Right. And so you went to Stanford. You were the first in our family to kind of make that trek down here from Portland to the Bay. And, moving, a lot of times college is this time to sort of establish your own identity. Like, what are you going to do now? Right. And leading into graduating and then going to do it. Can you tell us just like those early stages of how you followed in their footsteps and what you felt called to actually, what you saw and what you wanted to do?
Yeah. And I mean, finding your own identity right outside of what I had was never a goal of mine. And it still's not a goal. Like, I felt like I loved all of those models. So if you told me at the end of my life, I got to, take what they did it and take it further, I won. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I want to be this or I want to be that. Like, no, I loved, and I'm an oldest child of my mom, which meant that, having that approval of both my mom and my dad meant a lot, right? Like, you had older brothers, you had our circles. I had mom and dad, man, and really, dad as a young man trying to figure that out. I really wanted that approval. I still do from my dad and from all that. So I say, what I did was I did ask a question, and I vividly remember asking a question of, what is going to be my contribution to this effort? There was no question I was going to continue their work. There was no question. My father did, you call it youth development. I call it community development. My father did that. My mentors did that. My role models did that. I was going to do that. Now, what that looked like was going to be my own way. And that was the question that led me to get an answer from Jesse Jackson. I'm 18, 19 years old. Jesse Jackson comes, says digital divide is going to allow us to achieve the fourth element of civil rights, which is economic empowerment for Black people. I took that and been running with it ever since. We haven't. I don't aim. We got back from practice. I closed my eyes. I asked God, like I did this morning, what do you want from me, Lord? And I look from you when you said, I do that same practice and I'm going to say yes to whatever God says. That's my posture. And it doesn't stray from that answer, right? That came to me 18, 19 years old, 25 years ago. Economic empowerment. Digital divide is going to be part of that. Do that on the behalf of Black people and their quest for freedom, full freedom in this country. So that's kind of where it's at. And that was me being different because my dad wasn't that. Mr. Fuller wasn't that. That was going to be Tunde's role. And then there also was this last layer I'll give you, which was none of the people's role there was, you know, to do that, right? To be a Dr. King of our era, what does that look like? And for me, popular culture, and I think it still is this way to this day, has a different role than the church minister had before, right? So where Dr. King might have been shepherded into ministry because that's what had the attention of our people, I felt like popular culture had that. And so for me to be a basketball player meant that was going to be my way of like grabbing attention. Hey, I'm credible. Listen to me. It hasn't really panned out. I walked on the basketball team, didn't score, but that was the intention, right? Of me saying, I want to be my own person. My dad didn't care about, you know, wearing the best hoodie, but I do. My dad didn't care about starting a clothing line, but I did and am. So that was kind of like my version of being, you know, what we call at Esfachi making popular culture positive. So positive culture could be popular. That was like phase one. And then phase two was doing entrepreneurship and technology innovation to bring economic empowerment.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I don't even know if I wonder how almost intentional this is for you, but as we move kind of up the storyline now to what you're doing now with StreetCode, one of the things that I see is this diversity of Black and brown professionals that you have involved and always making sure to highlight what it is they do. Like I think about your huddles at the beginning of every Monday night where you're featuring different folks who are in the field, not just coming back as youth developers and as mentors, but as examples of folks out there every day actually doing it. And I wonder just how intentional that has been for you to make sure that the folks here in East Palo Alto have examples of people who look like them, and making sure that you highlight what exactly they do for a living to kind of expose the students to something different.
Yeah, I think it's intentional, but I also want to give credit, you know, to all those men that I mentioned. All of them try to do the same thing. You know, we saw missionaries and pastors, we saw community developers, but I don't know how many other things were there, right? And so when Silicon Valley, there's such a breadth. So I'm just continuing. I'm going to give y'all all we got. I got everything from Michael Grice. He held nothing back from me. Nothing back from me. He was trying to give full ride scholarships to go to college. Mr. Fuller gave everything. Our dad gave everything they had. So I just think the thing is growing. And we're here because they did that. You know, we're two Stanford grads. We get to jump on with 1,000 books behind us, with companies behind us, with CEOs after our name, because what they did. And I'm just trying to do the same thing for these next generation.
That's beautiful. Okay, so now you know we're in the present. We understand a little bit from the 15-year-old Tunde, who had a vision. It was a seed was planted to make sure that whatever you did, it was rooted in progress, not just for you, but for people who look like you, and that's powerful in and of itself. And you said, I'm going to find a way to make that my own. And you've done that. And now, 10 years ago, you launched StreetCode with a team of folks, behind you and a community behind you. If you were to talk to somebody comes up to Tunde and says, Tunde, explain to me what you're doing right now with StreetCode. What are you guys trying to accomplish? How do you answer that?
I mean, I answer it probably two ways, right? If I'm talking to somebody quick, I'm going to say we offer free tech education for communities of color. That's kind of, at a surface level what we're doing.
Right.
But what's deeper than that is we're trying to give a community of people who's been told that angle, that part is not for you. We're trying to unlock that. A. B, we're trying to tell them that the way in which you can do that can be and should be authentic to who you are, and will bless the world as a way of you doing that. So we need you in there. Some people call those innovators. Some people call that entrepreneurship. I like to call that Motowning the industry, right? When I saw that play, Motown, and saw Barry Gordy, yeah, and saw the role play Barry Gordy and how his heart to like, okay, we're gonna do it our own way, and we're not just gonna do it for us. We gonna make it world class. And now we having the 50th anniversary of Motown and the Wu. I feel the same way it's gonna be about tech. Like I feel the same way it's gonna be about innovation. We're gonna do it a different way. So I know we're gonna do it that way. We're already doing it. I have no doubt, never have, that we would do it that way. But that's not always easy to articulate. So I don't come off with that off top. But it is about us doing it in our own way. Yeah. Unlocking what God has given us. You said it beautifully in the beginning, how our gifts will manifest inside of that industry, or however you said it. That's what Street Code's all about.
One of the things that I think, Street Code and you with your leadership have kind of, you're constantly noticing and being sensitive to the way that communities like East Palo Alto are framed, right? Can you talk a little bit about the way that communities like East Palo Alto are framed, especially in a larger tech conversation, and how you and Street Code are trying to reframe who the folks are and what is possible for them inside the tech industry?
I've been on the verge of tears this entire joint. I think you're getting to the core of what I'm about. You and I grew up with people. Some of them was gangsters. I'm thinking of people in my head. Yeah. Real gangsters, real pimps.
Yep.
Some of them, unfortunately, real killers. Some of them, unfortunately, lost their life. These are all people we had real relationship with.
Yep.
Never ever, and God knows this to be true, would I ever classify that in my head. They're never that to me. They're never that to me. They not even it. We grew up with people who, when they tell us what they got arrested for, we would never believe it.
Right.
Because you ain't that.
Right.
You are not that. I could give you stories for days, Ram. And some of them we both know, some of them I only know, right? But like, they wasn't that. And so I know that as a fact. That wasn't I gotta learn thing. That's me DNA. Yep. To this day, it's the same thing, right? When people talk about East Palo Alto, that ain't real. That's not the East Palo Alto I know.
Right.
Now, there's some hangups, right? There's some easy things that we get caught up on. Income. Formal education. Yes. With those things, number one, that's not even true all the time.
Right.
We got people making a lot of money in East Palo Alto. There's people making a lot of money that got homes in here that you wouldn't assume. You and me both are two of them, right? That you wouldn't, oh man, East Palo Alto, you think East Palo Alto, you wouldn't think CEO, multiple businesses got it, No, you wouldn't think that because so the narrative's been painted. But yes, if you want to talk about on a whole, yes, we have lower income than Palo Alto. Yes, on a whole, do we have higher education, formal education than blank? But also, what about the generosity meter? What about the generosity meter? How many broke people do we know that if they had a meal would give you half of their meal?
100%.
Yes. How many people that if they know you ain't got something, Ram, my family, it's a true story. My family, I'm sorry if I'm, my family, Ram, 2 Stanford degrees. Our wives are getting PhDs together at Stanford. I have a beautiful, brilliant wife. I myself have given my life to this work that you talk about. We were given 60 days to move out of our home, Mountain View. Came home. I don't know if it was my wife or my daughter who saw the letter on the thing. You got 60 days to move out your house in the holiday season. October 1st. I think it was Tam's birthday. October 1st, we got it. We had 60 days. Our kids, 3 kids in the wealthiest school in the peninsula, which probably means in the state and the country.
Right.
friends that got businesses, started things. Ram, do you understand that when our family was, we had no savings account, we had no nothing. In fact, I don't even think we had health insurance active at that point.
Mm.
Three kids, if not four. Yeah, 4 kids to be a newborn and 3 other older infants.
Wow.
Our option A, B, and C was all on EPA.
Yeah.
Adrian Anderson, Justin Phipps, like, you can stay down here. You know, you can stay in the studio. Adrian Anderson, we living with my grandma, but we'll move out to the living room. Y'all can have this while you look for spots.
Right.
And then we were gonna stay in the RV on the block, use the facilities of a place I won't mention. Right. And all in the community. That hurt my heart, Ram, because other people knew it, but it wasn't. So generosity meter, East Palo Alto is the highest per capita generosity on the peninsula. But we don't hear that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? All the people that's living here, man, we done found a way to live in East Palo Alto, live in the Silicon Valley, raise our kids. We don't have the most innovative way to like survive in the Silicon Valley. We don't have that metric, because I guarantee you we would clean that up.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So we don't use the metrics. We don't use the measurements where we shine. We don't use that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I think the framing is a challenge for those of us that in this work to how do we talk about our own community? Yeah. Why do we keep saying underserved, underrepresented, low income? Why do we keep using those words?
Right.
Why can't we say what we are?
Right. That's beautiful. And you know, there's the tension in describing the community to folks outside of the community that you're speaking to, and that always comes up and is intention in this type of work. But one of the things that's really beautiful is the opportunity to frame that for kids.
Yes.
Early.
Yes.
Because that's how they see themselves. That's how they see the world. And that's what you innovate from. You know, and so what I've always really appreciated about StreetCode and the framing of StreetCode is not that these are underserved, underrepresented, and they need a handout and they need opportunity, but more so, no. What gets created from who they are? Struggle is one element of who they are, but other cultural elements that are embedded and have long historical roots even before America. When you bring innovation, when they're invited to the table of innovation, things get produced that are powerful. And so there's a need in Silicon Valley for that voice, right? That I think StreetCode has been really brilliant at not just communicating to the outside world, but communicating to the community and creating opportunities for that to happen.
But Ram, so to me, in my mind, I think thank you. And, you know, God bless the people like Frederick and Tamara and Jasmine and Squint and, you know, the host of others that have, man, wrestle with it. This ain't light. It's not easy. Wrestle with how to frame, how to do it. But I will challenge those of us in the work who believe what we know.
Yeah. We
can't just tell our young people what they are. We also have to frame it for the outside world, because the two are inextricably tied.
Right.
Because when you have 100-some nonprofits in this 2.5 square mile radius, right, that means we're exporting a message. That message becomes your brand. It becomes your identity. It becomes what you're known for when a young kid from East Palo Alto shows up in a school in Palo Alto, shows up at the Stanford D School, shows up at Facebook or Meta, shows up at Google. That's reputation, what you carry. So we have an obligation to say, nah, you're this, and this is who they are. So when they show up, they get invited in as such.
So it sounds like there is what you're saying, and it makes so much sense to me, is that if we're trying to create opportunity and pathways from an East Palo Alto into an engagement and a collaboration with the larger tech world, yes, it's important to make sure that the students here have the confidence to see themselves as participants in this and creators. And because it's going to involve the other side as well, we have to make sure that the other side believes that and sees that as well. And then you're working on the back end trying to create these pathways. And so, the interesting thing about street code is that you have to have your finger to the pulse on high quality youth development. You have to have the finger to the pulse on community development and engagement. And you have to have your fingers to the pulse of the tech industry and the trends you're seeing there, and kind of think backwards. What are the implications then for what we need to be educating our youth on? And so I want to move you towards, kind of helping us understand some of the trends that you're seeing in your field, however you take that have implications specifically for the Black and brown teens that we're focused on building for, and a lot of our audience is thinking about how to support.
Yeah, I think let me take the trend of AI. Social media has been a hot topic, for the last 10 years. And I say I merge both of them because I think, for Black and brown communities particularly, and I think the narrative is still early, but I think it's trending towards the way of AI, social media, big tech in general being a harm to communities like ours, right? And that's a trend that's been coming on for some time. Yes, from the perspective of inclusion, from the perspective of disparity, wealth gap, digital divide, access. I mean, that's been the narrative since tech came, right? And there's also this added layer of like what it's doing to young people in general, right? What is AI going to do to our, educational situations and development? What is AI? What is social media doing to our mental health? Those kind of things. All that to say, the same. If you bucket all those, it does point to one trend that I think is important, which is that our communities need to be at the table. Right. And this is the reason why. Our communities understand human development, community, more so than any others, because we've needed it to survive.
Right.
So we get that. We over-index on community. We over-index on human compassion. We over-index on that. So when we over-index on, what it is to combat isolation, right?
Right.
When you're the only Black person in a grade, or you have to understand how to make community with the few you have, or to come home and find a place. That YGB, BBA, these are all things, tools that we've had to develop to be able to thrive in the area where we're at. And so we need that, because the threat of isolation, the threat of individualism, is only increasing. So the need for our communities to be a part of it is a trend that I think will continue. The need for human development in the area of artificial intelligence, the need of character development, and the need, and to transparency. I mean, these are all things where that is only increasing, and I feel like our community can help bring that to the just growing wave of new technology right now.
I love it. And so, you're likely not the only one thinking about this and building for that. And StreetCode certainly is continuing to be a force in that, and innovating and thinking about new ways. And you're having to be nimble and listen to your people and listen to the industry and figure out what's going on. I'm curious if you can give some shout outs to some other organizations or other people who are creating in innovative ways to support Black and brown youth thriving in the tech industry. If there's just other folks that our audience should know about.
I mean, my first thought goes to Mookie Izari. I think his last name is. Mookie was the first person I saw doing this work. Worked at Plugged In, which is based in East Palo Alto. This is in 1998, right? 1999. These people were doing youth programs, redeveloping websites for big time clients, cultural clients too. I think MTV or Nike were part of their clientele in the early stages of this whole tech wave. And he now has went on to Intel, had a phenomenal career. Went to Stanford to get his business, degree, and then went on and now is doing some work with SEI, who is also doing phenomenal work particularly with Black youth in development in Portland, Oregon. And those two combined, I think, are doing some amazing work. They're talking about workforce development in a revolutionary way. StreetCode gets to be a part of that, witness it, and then play a part. Dr. Brandon Nicholson over at Hidden Genius, absolutely incredible thinker in terms of and his team in terms of how to move this forward for Black youth. And I have to give, the last shout out to Praxis. We just got back. Praxis, not a Black organization, not necessarily thinking about Black and brown communities specifically, but thinking about how to make things redemptive in a world that is naturally exploitative. And you could map this to the tech industry.
Yep.
By default exploitative, at best ethical, but how do you push it to be redemptive? And that means with AI being exploitative, with AI being ethical in some cases, how do you make redemptive AI? And we just heard a shout out on that to Andy Crouch and Dave Blanchard and the whole Praxis team in terms of how to think about making things redemptive. That also is inspiration for me.
Yeah, it's always encouraging to me, and that's what we're both coming back from the annual Praxis Summit out there in Napa, and being surrounded by so many different folks who are accessing their imagination, combining it with, they talked about lament and just seeing injustice and feeling something about it, and then creating from that place. To see so many people doing that really is encouraging to me, because oftentimes the problem seems so big, and it can feel so daunting. And this type of work can be, it doesn't have to be, but it can be, you can't operate in a silo and it can be a little lonely. And so to be around folks and to be encouraged that a lot of work is being done, a lot of people agree with you, both in seeing the problem and in your heart to solve it, and they're doing something about it. And so I think our audience will be excited to hear about those folks, and all of those people will be highlighted in the show notes. I want to move us on to our last kind of section of this interview, which is all focused on youth development, and it's something we ask all of our guests. A list of 4 questions. So I'll pop through this, and no need to answer quickly, but we'll pop through these. The first question is: if you can choose one critical skill that every teen should master to be successful as adults, what would you say that is?
Verbal communication. As a man speaketh, so is he. We have to be able to articulate, verbalize, communicate our vision, communicate our identity. Verbal communication, I think, is powerful.
That's awesome. Love it. Apart from the Ambition app, maybe shameless plug, can you recommend a tool or an app that you think every teenager should be using right now?
Yeah, I have 3 teenagers in my home, almost 4. I guess I'll have 4 in a few months. They all need to master the Google Suite. I'm sorry, they just got to be able to send emails crisp. They need to understand how to save documents and manage file management. They need to be able to understand what an Excel document is and be able to track numbers and calculate and forecast. They do. They teach me, but I think every teen should be able to master the Google Suite. We good.
Love it. All right. So, you're talking to adults who are actively engaged in a teenager's life or a group of teenagers' life. What's your best piece of advice that you would give them?
Goodness gracious. I mean, I don't have any advice that probably isn't already trite. The scripture that comes to mind. Well, so there's a scripture that comes to mind. It's 1 Corinthians 13. I can't memorize it, but essentially, it talks about if you got faith that can move mountains, if you've done everything, this as generous as you are, you got all these gifts. You can speak in multiple languages, like,
Yeah.
but you have not love, it's nothing. So to me, the question for all of us is to find love. And then when you think about what love is, and I'll give just the first iteration, love is patient. So I would tell all of us to figure out how to practice patience in our work. And that's very challenging, because that may speak to a nonprofit founder like yourself and myself, who's patient in the like, man, this takes time to get this out rolling.
Yeah, that's right.
The patience to not give up when it gets really tough. It's about, those of us who have young mentees and young friends who are patient in figuring out what life is. And you feel like, man, I poured so much in, why they haven't gotten it right. What does patience look like?
Yeah. Patience
with ourselves, like, man, I think about my deficits all the time, and I could get discouraged. But if I could practice what love is to myself and be patient, that's what I would tell somebody.
It's beautiful. Awesome. And the last one is, you have the undivided attention. Now, teens don't have a whole lot of that. So you have 30 seconds, undivided attention of every Black and brown teen in America right now. What would you tell them? What's your message to them?
My message is, Jesus is the answer. That's my message. But really, if you dive down into what that really means for me, there's a kingdom way of living. There's a natural way of living. If I analyze those two things, basically those are opposite. So I say, don't believe the hype is the way I would translate that to a young teen. If somebody tells you that thing is really hard, not with God. If someone tells you that thing is really easy, they probably lying, right? So when I'm unpacking that, don't believe the hype. Like, you've got to dig in and hear from God, understand what the kingdom is saying about these things, and you'll probably have a very different answer than what is in the world. What's happiness? It ain't the money. It ain't the, it ain't that. You talk to people who live life long, they'll tell you, they'll tell you that it's empty. And go to the word, you could have really easily found out, no, that's not it, right? Seek ye first the kingdom, then these things will be added. So there's just, I would say, man, get to the kingdom. Young king, young queen, young royalty. I get to the kingdom.
I love it. Tune, thank you.
No, thank you, fam. That was, Ram, you got a gift, bro. And you got a lot of them, but this is one of them.
Thanks, bro.